Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining Spur Impact today. I'm excited to have with us the Biden Foundation for the Protection of Children. And with me today, we have Patty Daly Lewis, Esquire, who's the Executive Director of the program. We have Claudine Malone, who is the Program Director for the Beau Biden Foundation, as well as Dr. Tricia Scott, who is the Director of Strategic Partnerships and Grants. So thank you, ladies, and welcome.
Thank you, Jennifer.
So I know this is an important time for us with the pandemic going on. Your organization is bringing to light some maybe not foreseen side effects of this pandemic, and things that our children and our youth are going through that might not necessarily be making the headlines right now. So can you, Patty, could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, Jennifer. Children are quarantined like the rest of us, and they are sheltering in place. For many of these children, very dangerous places. We have seen reports to the child abuse hotlines around the nation drop by more than 50%. We have children that were, when this started, really safe in one place, and that was their school. And now they're not in school. The other fact of the matter is that adults who regularly interact with these children that are making the type of calls to the child abuse hotline to protect them are not seeing them. They don't have the ability to interact with them. So we're talking about coaches, mentors, teachers, counselors, physicians, nurses. They do not have the ability to see children in the way they have been seeing them, to make sure that they're safe, that they are getting the food they need, they're getting the medicine they need. And as a result, children are going unprotected. Again, more than a 50% drop in calls, which people would say maybe, oh, well, that's a good sign. It's not a good sign. It's a bad sign. We also know that domestic violence has risen substantially during this period of time, which is also a very dangerous situation for children from both physical and emotional and mental abuse. So we know that we have to do better by our children. On the other hand, they are online much more than most children have ever been online. And there are dangers online that great parents really don't even know about. We know that children are gaming at a much higher rate than they had before the quarantine. And the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of danger out there for children, particularly in terms of the grooming process for sexual abuse. We know that the average gamer, average, is 35 years old, and that the grooming process is often initiated and carried out through gaming. A lot of folks don't know that. They don't think about it. And as a result, our children are being left totally unprotected online and totally unprotected in their homes.
I was actually on your website, and there was a statistic on there: 500,000 predators at any given time have access, in a theory, have access to our children. And as a parent, that was an astounding number, to see that in black and white, to see that kind of number.
500,000 people looking for children in a place where there are so many children. So right in your living room, Jennifer, your children are at risk, and many people don't even know it. So we have a situation with children in danger in many homes. We have a situation with no one watching. And we have a situation where children are in danger while in the home, not from physical violence, but from grooming. And I mean, frankly, a lot of children are very bored. And what this does is it produces them to do things they wouldn't normally do. And that's one of the things we really want to make sure we get the message out is happening. But more important than that is we want to give people the skills to be able to deal with the issue. And
Right.
we're doing tons of training, which my colleagues, Trisha and Claudine, are going to talk about.
Yes, Dr. Scott, Patty said a statistic, 50% the call rate has gone down in reports of abuse. And the Beau Biden Foundation and what you work for specifically for that organization is the programs and the services that you're offering out to the community, whether it be to the parents or to the teachers and the coaches and the mentors. Can you speak a little bit about what the Beau Biden Foundation is doing to help protect the children during the pandemic?
Sure. So we do an awful lot of training, Jennifer, in terms of getting the adults who serve children directly to understand how to recognize and report abuse, and also what policies should be in place in their organizations to keep children safe. So we have 3 very popular trainings that are going on now, and they're all online and they're all interactive because we want the people who are in these workshops to ask questions, to give their concerns, to really be able to tap the expertise of the team to sort of help them think these things through. So some of the trainings are grooming children, families, and organizations. Patty alluded to grooming. Grooming is a big problem, especially in organizations that serve children. Let's be honest, people who are predators for children go to organizations that have children. So we really try to help organizations in this workshop think through what could be the signs before abuse happens, which I think is the most powerful part of everything that we do. The second workshop that we do, and we do them online and face-to-face, is recognizing and reporting abuse and neglect. And Claudine will sort of go into that in a second, but we really want the adults who serve children to recognize what those indicators are when children are really being abused or neglected. So we as adults are all mandatory reporters, and therefore we have to know what this looks like and what we need to look for. So it's really important. And then the third workshop that we're doing really is based on what sort of happened in COVID-19. So schools and youth serving organizations have had to pivot so quickly in terms of going online and interacting with children online. And so my team, Claudine and Patty and Josh and everybody at the Beau Biden Foundation really worked hard to think through the policies that these organizations are going to have to need when you're looking through a webcam. So what are best practices of adults when you interact with children? And honestly, the number one thing for everybody to remember is that all interaction with children must be interruptible. And so what that means is that, and observable, I'm sorry. So what that means is that there should be no isolated one-on-ones. That doesn't mean that adults can't interact with children one-on-one. What it means is that there has to be some observation, it has to be observable and interruptible. And we help schools think through what that'll look through in an online environment and in a face-to-face environment. So those 3 workshops are really, really important to what the work that we're doing today. We also have 2 really powerful ebooks that I hope that parents and caregivers have a chance to look on our website and download, that really help them think through in terms of what are some of the apps that their kids are on and what are some of the dangers for young children and teenagers right now in this online environment.
The ebook, if you haven't had the opportunity to look at it, it is phenomenal. It's very enlightening. I wanted to let everybody know who's listening, and if you have any specific questions, please feel free to post them to the live comment section on the right-hand side of your screen. The ladies are welcome, excited to hear what your questions might be. And Claudine, Dr. Scott spoke a little bit about what your team is working on and the items that you can, as an adult, that you're required to report. So what do we need to report? What do we need to be on the lookout for?
Thank you, Jennifer. So because children aren't going to school, They're not jumping on a school bus. They're not running into a classroom. There are a lot less eyes on them now than there were before. And educators are really working very diligently to maintain that connectivity. But it's a little bit more narrow now, right? Because it's through the lens of a webcam. So we are, part of our virtual learning environment instruction has to do with what would abuse and neglect look like through that view. And then also thinking about other members of the community, such as the individual who's delivering a package to someone's front porch, what they may see or hear that could be an indicator of abuse or neglect, or a neighbor who observes something happening over the fence. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen and have a list of indicators of abuse and neglect. And so in looking at this list, a lot of us have seen these checklists before. There may be one occurrence that is an indicator of abuse and neglect, but more times than not, it's an accumulation of observations. And so some of these things may be seen, even through the lens of a webcam. If you have a teacher who is interacting with a student and they can see an obvious facial injury, for example, or they overhear audibly through a threat of harm or a threat of physical harm through, and I understand you're not able to see my checklist, I'm sorry, I'll try again. You're not able to see a specific injury, then, or the child is acting differently all of a sudden where they hadn't been acting that way before, where you see a slide back of a student had achieved, or a child who had achieved a particular task, and now they're falling way behind. So these kind of sudden changes in behaviors, sudden change of environment may lead you to believe that there is abuse or neglect going on. So, sorry, so I started down the list. I'm going to go back to that now. A student who is trying to hide an injury, right, while they're on a webcam. And certainly, any disclosure of abuse or neglect from a child, it takes an incredible amount of courage for a child to share or disclose something like that. And one of the most important things you could offer in response to that is, I believe you. Thank you for telling me. That's one of their greatest fears, is not being believed. So, and then certainly making a report to the hotline. I'll get to that in just a moment. And in the column on the right is indicators of neglect. So when we think of the hotline, there's a lot of anxiety around making that phone call for a lot of folks. I would need to ask you to think of this hotline as a request for services or resources for the family to keep that child safe. So if we have children who really just appear sickly and they're not getting health care, children who are unsupervised for extended periods of time, making that phone call can truly, truly, truly make children safer. So thinking about it in that way. And then we know that in every state there are mandatory reporters. Some states, everybody is a mandatory reporter, like Delaware. But everybody plays a role in keeping children safe. And so I encourage you to make that call to the hotline. There's a link, and we can probably share that with you in the chat feature for hotline numbers for each state. And also to parents, having that conversation about how you interact online, as Patty introduced in the beginning, and our ebooks stress this too, having that conversation with your children very openly, and making sure that they remember that you're one of the safe adults they can come to if they're uncomfortable about anything.
Claudine, can you speak about if I suspect one of my neighbors or a child I have associations with. What kind of information does the hotline need, or should I observe? Should I wait 24 hours, 72 hours, or is this something that once I feel it, I need to make the call?
Great question. I'm glad you asked it. It's an immediate call. Please do not wait. A delay in reporting a suspected abuse or neglect situation could not only place that child in further harm, but there are also maybe other children in that household or who the abuser has access to that could be further harmed as well. So making that call immediately is really critical. And as much demographic information as possible, the child's name, age, location, but most importantly, you only need a reasonable suspicion. So it would lead a reasonable person to believe that there's abuse or neglect. You don't need proof, you don't need evidence. That's it, a reasonable suspicion that that child is being abused or neglected by that abuser or in that home.
Okay. And in the chat, the foundation did put in the hotline links, so you can find the phone numbers for every organization for your state, depending on your state. Because you guys, I learned just recently, you guys work in 20 different states. You have workshops and organizations that you work with across 20 states. That's pretty remarkable. Patty, what have you found by working across the states? What is your hope by having the Beau Biden Foundation continue to reach across the country?
Our primary hope is that we keep children safe across the country. We know that there are many places where children don't have the type of, or the folks who work with children don't have the type of trainings available. And so we've been working very, very hard to get trainings to people in all 50 states. We actually did, I was thinking about this when you were talking, Jennifer, we did a training last week and we had people from as far away as Alaska and Puerto Rico involved in the training. What that tells me is that people want to learn. They want to know what they can do to keep children safe. What it's taught me is I am more committed than ever to the belief that everyone should be a mandatory reporter. As Claudine indicated, Delaware is a state that makes every adult a mandatory reporter. But we are one of 17 or 18 states that do that. So when I think about children in the other states and I think about people that are not considered mandatory reporters, maybe they don't understand. That doesn't mean they can't report. It just means that they're not mandatory reporters. So one message we want to get out is, even if you're not on that list, if you're in another state, please make that call. If you are an Amazon delivery person who sees a child in need, a child in harm's way, please make that call. It doesn't matter that you're not mandatory, but the fact of the matter is mandatory reporters need training. It's unfair to ask people to make that call without giving them the background of what to look for and what does it mean? What does reasonable suspicion mean? What does abuse mean? But I am more committed than ever to make sure that children everywhere have the protections that our children in Delaware have.
Right. So with the pandemic, a lot of organizations have turned to services and programs online. And some of those organizations might not necessarily have done that before, directed online services to children. Dr. Scott, can you speak to if you have an organization or you work with an organization that traditionally didn't have an online presence or program for the youth? How can they get involved? What would be steps for that organization to invite the Beau Biden Foundation in to do a workshop or to do activities that might help staff see those indicators?
So that's a great question, Jennifer. And as a previous principal, I really advocate, one of our trainings is called Child Protection in a Virtual Learning Environment. And we sort of, we walk through policies and best practices for the adults who work in schools or these youth serving organizations, what that looks like in a virtual learning environment. And then we also, in the same workshop, review what are the things they need to look for in terms of recognizing abuse and then reporting the abuse. And so we walk through both of those two components within the same workshop. And if I had to advocate anything, I think that right now schools need this. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and we've also gotten some feedback that we've added to the training. We've worked with counselors and teachers and mentors and volunteers and administrators since March 16th, to be quite frank. And we've really worked hard to put this in place so that schools feel better, youth serving organizations feel as if they have a real policy and they've thought this through. They haven't been able to do that. And as a previous principal, there's no way to do that first when you have to pivot so quickly in terms of going online. And so this is a way for schools to just take a breath, make sure all the policies are in place that they need, and that their staff is highly trained in terms of recognizing that abuse and what it could look like in a webcam, right? It looks a little different than face-to-face. So we don't have that voice as much. So we have to be a little bit more diligent in what we see.
A little more observant.
Mm-hmm.
What we see on that 2x2 screen.
It's not easy.
Now we're starting to wrap up. We just have a few more minutes. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to post them in the live chat. Patty, I know that you guys have a couple activities, events coming up, some virtual, some non-virtual coming up. Would you like to speak about them?
Sure. We have coming up at the end of the month. First of all, I want to say that this is our Protect a Child a Day in May. Protect a Child a Day in May. Partake in some of these activities, please. So we do have our run had to be canceled, our trail run. It's a very, very popular run. So what we've done is we've taken it virtual, and we encourage folks to sign up for the run and run whenever they want, wherever they want. But what they do when they participate in that run is they protect children. We also have 2 golf tournaments, which fingers crossed are going to go off, one October 5th in Newcastle County and one October 22nd in Sussex County. Again, that gives us the funds to be able to protect children. I also want to get a little plug in for our signature program called the Shield of Protection. It's more than just one training, but it's a deep dive that individuals can take into organizations. What we will do is we will work with you on your policies, procedures, practices, and programming, and make sure that you have the very best practices, programmings, and trainings for your folks. That really from the time children walk in the door until the time they are safely home. We have experts in law, which as you may have indicated, I am an attorney. I've been an attorney for 35 years. Law enforcement, Claudine has been a police officer for 20 years, and education, and Tricia Scott has been an educator for 30 years. We know that with our experience, we can work with organizations to make children in those organizations safer.
Yes, thank you. Those definitely look like some fun events, and the trail run is coming up on May 30th. I will have to take my boys out for that one. Now, Claudine, could you speak a little bit about June and what June means to your organization?
Well, we are going to continue to forge ahead. In June, we're training numerous school districts in the state of Delaware for the virtual learning environment, in the hope to enhance connectivity throughout the summer, and not knowing yet what September or late August may look like for educators. We're accruing new partnerships for the Shield of Protection so that we can help organizations and schools who serve children have a solidified best practice policy and codes of conduct when it comes to interacting with children that is supported with training. So helping them not just develop policy, but provide the training that goes along with it, so that they kind of understand the full picture of how they can be a part in preventing abuse and neglect in children. You're on mute, Jen.
Sorry about that. Do you guys have a need for volunteers in your organization? And if there's any, and if so, how might someone get involved?
Well, we always love to have volunteers, and volunteers can work with us in a variety of different ways. We do some trainings for volunteers. The volunteers that want to go out and do Beau Biden Foundation trainings, we will train them to deliver the best type of trainings if that's something they are interested in. We also have people that help us. God bless us, we get into the office soon. We also have people that help us in our office, working on everything from thanking our donors to getting ready for events. And then, of course, when we do have events, we have a need for volunteers to help us. Particularly the golf events are very volunteer heavy. That means everything from sitting out on the course to make sure we have a hole-in-one contest. So if you get a hole-in-one on certain holes, you can win a car. And so we definitely need people there to be witnesses to that. That is required by the companies. So we have lots of different volunteer possibilities for folks.
Okay. Well, we're starting to just come on a couple more minutes. Do you ladies have any final things that you would like to share with our listeners today?
You know, Jennifer, I'd like to first thank you, because getting this information out is how we protect children. I spent a lot of my career looking at children that were broken, and how we make sure that we prevent abuse. For so long, we've allowed it to go to pick up the pieces instead of working to prevent abuse, and we can do that. And I ask people to understand what their obligations are. Children cannot, Beau used to say this all the time, and in essence, it's one of our real touchstones. Children cannot speak for themselves. They rely upon adults to speak for them. So whether or not it's the person who delivers our mail or the person who delivers, our touchless pizza, it's important that those folks understand that protecting children is on all of us. And if we all take a role and we all work together, we will see safer children here and across the country. So getting that message out, I can't even tell you how important it is. And thank you very much for that.
I think that's a very poignant message, is to say that it doesn't just have to be a parent or a teacher. It can be the pizza delivery man, the Amazon man or woman, and you can see those and make that call on behalf of that child who can't speak for themselves. Trisha, Claudine, anything else you would like to share?
I would just encourage folks to go to our website, sign up for a training, and carrying on what Patty said, as uncomfortable as it is for many folks to hear about or learn about, when we don't learn about it and we don't talk about it, we don't speak out for children, children continue to suffer in silence. So thank you for doing this today.
And my only final thought is just that we're the difference makers, right, for kids. And we have to remember that we're their voice, and we can truly make a difference for these kids if we just keep an eye out, be observant, and speak up.
Right. And I would highly recommend, if you haven't been to the Beau Biden Foundation website, to please take a moment and look through the website and see everything that they have to offer, from the workshops, from the ebooks, through the eye-opening statistics, the 500,000 predators online at any moment, and how calls have dropped by 50% since March. Really some, I don't want to say amazing, but some very eye-opening statistics, and how we can and what we can do to help protect our children and our community. So thank you, ladies. Thank you to the Beau Biden Foundation and to Spur Impact for putting on this event today. Please continue to check back at the Spur Impact and Millennial Summit Facebook pages for our next Facebook Live talk. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.